So there's something I've been noticing happening. It happened through a YouTube video that is public. There is many conversations that I've been having kind of behind the scenes, both with some, mainly my private label clients, unfortunately, but also people that aren't my private label clients, but are also owning a brand. And it's something that I'm kind of seeing a lot more of, and it's becoming a lot more common, unfortunately, and something that is brutal to admit for people. And so that's why when you see it done publicly, it actually is very admirable. And that's detailing brands are failing. And so it's something that I just kind of noticed. I obviously keep my ear to the ground in the industry. Me having my own product brand, it's something I'm highly aware of, and I kind of know the pitfalls, and I know where people can get stuck. Luckily, I have a lot of experience with helping out other brands through my private label business, and so I try my best to avoid some of the pitfalls that kind of plague brands and lead to them going out of business. And so I think because of that, I wanted to record this podcast. I know a lot of these brands kind of ghost follow, but it's also very interesting to watch. And I just wanted to talk about some of the pitfalls that I think happen, because while these other brands are going under, my brand is growing. Orders are up, customers are sticking around. And so I kind of wanted to break down why I think that is. I have some concrete evidence, but mainly it's just why I think that's happening. And so, I just kind of wanted to talk about it because I think there is a lot of crossover between not only product brands, but also detailing company brands. And so I know a lot of you that listen to the podcast, and maybe a lot of you that follow on YouTube, you may like some of the stuff that these brands that are failing or going out of business have done in the past, and you like their formulas. And it's kind of it's a bummer for the brand owner. It's also a bummer for the customer who liked and maybe even became dependent upon that product brand. So it's a big loss for everyone. And I think the first reason, when I kind of looked at this and kind of sat on it for a few days, the first reason why I think this happens, and this is so common even in running a car detailing business too, it's like brands are run on a house of cards model. So they advertise cheap prices, but then they charge you more on shipping, or the opposite, right? They sell it cheaper on Amazon than their own website. They sell it for double the price on Amazon than their own website. They're kind of all over the place, right? And really, and then in car detailing, we see like a race to the bottom, right? We're getting into the summer, and the number one complaint I always see or hear about is like, oh, there's so many, mobile detailers that have just popped up all of a sudden, or there's a new shop in town, or there's a new car wash in town, and they're advertising a $39 monthly subscription. How am I going to compete with that? And the reality is that whether you are advertising a cheap price and then trying to make that up on shipping on the back end, or whatever it may be, right? That's not a brand. That is a short-term play to make quick money. The mobile detailer that just pops up and he's never operated before, and he's got a Home Depot bucket or whatever, he's asking to use the customer's hose and their power and all that. That is a working to make some quick cash. That is not a sustainable business model. That is not we know that. You can't do a $150 full detail. You cannot do a $350, ceramic coating install in someone's driveway. That is not sustainable as a business model, right? It's not a brand. That is someone trying to make quick cash. And we see that in the product brand space of these brands that pop up seemingly out of nowhere, because honestly, the detailers are probably tired of detailing and they're looking for another avenue. They're looking for, a way out, another revenue stream. And so they think a product brand is a natural progression, right? And so they start it, and then they have confusing labels. Their website is clunky. It doesn't work. They don't send email to nurture their clients. They don't have all these other things that go into it. I don't want to reveal too much for those other brands listening, but if you have ever purchased something from me, you know that the experience is much different when you buy something from Jimbo's Detailing versus buying something from other websites. Maybe, I guess I don't really consider other brands competitors, but for lack of a better term, competitor websites, right? It's a much different experience. And that's because one thing that I learned in my detailing business personally, and then as I began to develop private label side of my business, was that experience means a lot. Experience is tied in with that brand. And so I took all my learnings from that, my consulting days at Turtle Wax and all that, and realized that the experience that you build around your brand is super important. Just like the liquids in the bottle are super important, and brands mess with this all the time. I mean, I was in meetings constantly with many brands that launch a product, they have success with it, and then they start cheapening the formula, right? That happens all the time, and they don't tell anyone. But another big one is under promising and under delivering. And I've talked about this in other podcast episodes too, especially with a lot of these pop-up brands. We're even starting to see it. They're not calling it, but I'll call it for what it is, with bigger YouTubers launching brands recently. It's a licensing play. They've tried to distract us with talking about this private labeling versus contract blending discussion. But really what it is a licensing play. And I'm not even mad at it. They just don't call it what it is. It's a licensing play. They are licensing their name for someone else to profit on their name. That's what's going on. So the conversation is, I had an investor that came in and helped me do what I always wanted to do, or, I finally started my own brand and this is what I've always wanted to do. But everyone's like a little confused of like, well, why aren't you selling it on your own website? Or why are you, why is it like a little confusing? Or why do you have a distributor instead of selling it direct? Because it's a licensing deal. It is a straight licensing deal. They are licensing their name, their brand, their pull, essentially. And so someone else came along, interjected the money, is paying them a royalty probably, and they don't own the brand. They just, the creator doesn't own the brand, or maybe a very, very, very small percentage. They just own their name, and they have licensed out their name for someone else to make money. It's very common. Very common. That's why when you go to Target and you see, Turtle Wax microfiber towels and a Turtle Wax bucket and a Turtle Wax mini handheld vacuum, and you never see Turtle Wax, the brand, talking about these things. And if you turn it around and look at the back of the packaging, it says how it's licensing, the Turtle Wax name, trademark used under licensing agreement, whatever. That is just cash flow, easy revenue for the brand, in this example, Turtle Wax, right? But Turtle Wax doesn't really have any say in what's going on. I mean, they do, but to some extent, but they never market and sell those products. It's just a licensing deal. And there's probably a million examples of this across many different industries. But that's one thing the detailing industry hasn't really seen up until recently. And unfortunately, the creators that are doing it aren't talking about it as a licensing deal. They're talking about it as their own brand, which is not really true. It is true, but it's in the gray area. But again, this is not a brand. This is a short-term money play. We will see those brands fizzle, guaranteed. Guaranteed. So, here's what I'm doing differently. Okay, so the licensing thing is a big deal, but again, they're not calling it what it is, but that is what it is, right? So let me explain why I think my brand is working. So first and foremost, I focus on real world performance. I work with real chemists. I test it myself. I have decades of experience in detailing and almost a decade of experience in private labeling, formulation, development, right? If it doesn't make your life easier or the results better, I simply just don't sell it, because I've seen that trap from so many brands, is they just want to release another product. They just want to release another quick detail spray. They just want to release another interior detailer. And it's like, but why? Well, the answer is because it's a licensing deal. They don't really have a say or control over it. The money person does. So they're just trying to, it's like, stocks that are owned, publicly traded stocks that are owned by investment companies. They're only looking out They're only looking out for bottom line profits, right? But this muddies the water. This creates confusion, right? Because people go, well, why am I going to buy that detail spray over this detail spray over that detail spray? They're all kind of the same. And then that's where you get in. They start competing on price, and then they lose margin. So then they try to make it up in shipping, right? So I don't play that game. I don't have gimmicks. I don't do fake deals. I don't do hidden shipping charges. I don't do limited time traps. Here's what I do: fair prices all the time, right? Whether you buy on my website, whether you buy on Amazon, you don't get punished for where you shop. It's the same price on Amazon as it on my web as it is on my website, right? You don't get the experience if you buy on Amazon that you get when you buy directly on my website, but you're not being punished for where you shop. I've seen that over and over and over. Why is this, XYZ product double the price on Amazon as it is on their website, right? It's just ridiculous. Why would you do that? Again, these brands are playing just this short-term game that they think they can trick the audience, right? Another thing is, because I don't have investors, I completely cash flow this myself. I cash flow it from the orders that come in. I don't overwhelm you with 50 options, mainly because that puts me in a bad cash flow pinch, right? And I go back to my true North Star, which is I focus on real world performance. If it doesn't make my life easier, if it doesn't make your life easier, or if it doesn't make the results that you're getting better, I just don't create it, because then I don't have to fabricate some story. And I don't want to overwhelm you. Again, I'm the In-N-Out burger, not the McDonald's. There's plenty of brands that have played that McDonald's card and they're having success or seemingly having success. But I could make the argument that these licensing deals are short-term gain, right? And I think it's bad for the creators. As much as it seems good up front and maybe they have this, firework explosion of a brand, I think the long-term, the 5-10 year, outlook on this is really grim for them because they don't own it. And I think for the creators, it puts them in a very, very vulnerable position long term. But again, they think it's great, and but I've seen this happen before. So really what I've learned both from private labeling and having my own brand now is that customers are smart. You guys see through this shady stuff, the inflated shipping, the weak products, the Me Too products, broken promises, right? And really, you guys, us as the consumer, whether it's the detailing space or other spots, we're sick of it. We're tired of it, right? And I literally have had this. And this is kind of where this podcast episode idea kind of all bubbled up together. I was seeing Brian with Apex talk about how he's, shutting down his brand pretty publicly, which I thought was really admirable for him. I think he's got something else in the works. That's just my spidey senses. I think another licensing deal. I don't know Brian. I've hung out with him. I really, really like him, but I think there's a licensing deal coming. Again, I don't talk to him. That's just my own speculation, right? So I think we're going to see a rebrand here because most people don't admit that their brand has failed unless they're working towards something else. But I could be wrong, right? But I've literally had customers message me saying that they've tried XYZ brand, they got burned, then they found me, and now they're hooked, right? Because my products actually perform. They, tried Maxell and it scratched the crap out of their car, their brand new black BMW. Now they need to fix it. They found me. They loved my videos, and now they're interested in whatever, right? So I think that's how it's real. If you're running a detailing business and you have people coming back again and again and again and again, not because of ads, but because the product delivered, I think that's how you're onto something that's not built on a deck of cards. When you have people come to you and say, I tried the car wash down the street, but they stole my sunglasses, or they rummaged through my wife's purse that was in the back seat, or man, it just left more water spots. My car looked dirtier, right? The price goes out the window, right? So yeah, a lot of detailing brands are failing. A lot of detail companies will be failing in your neck of the woods. If you're worried about all the detailers popping up all of a sudden, they're going to fail. unfortunately. And honestly, though, I'm not surprised because they built on hype. And hype only lasts so long. Me personally, whether it's my detailing business or my product brand business, I build trust. That's what I'm all about. So if you're tired of overpriced bottles, tired of cheap formulas, tired of confusing claims, why is the label so incomplete? I don't know what to do because they didn't tell me what to do on the bottle. The instructions are incomplete. That's so common. You're probably nodding your head. You know that's true. Why didn't they put this on the bottle? Why are they telling me, oh, I'm in their Facebook group and they're telling me one thing, but why didn't they just put that on the bottle? Now I'm confused. I don't know what to do. All right. Again, brands built on House of Cards. And it's really hard to trust these brands long term because you never know when they're going to just fold up. You never know when their licensing deal is just going to, end. Right. At least we knew with podcasters and podcast networks and stuff like that. Hey, I signed a 3-year deal, right? You're not surprised when a professional, goes from Nike to Adidas because you knew they only signed a 10-year deal, right? And they take their name, likeness, and image, NIL to college, right? You're not surprised when they transfer colleges, right? Because they're just licensing their name. Sorry, it took me a little while for that to come to my brain. But those are just licensing deals. When Michael Jordan is doing a Gatorade commercial, right? It's just a licensing deal. They're just licensing his name, image, whatever. The same is true in the detailing space. They're just not upfront about it. And so that's how you know something shady is going on. And then they launch a bunch of Me Too products and they think they have this solid, brand built on bedrock, but really it's just built on sand, right? So if you're tired of all this, I invite you to check out my brand, built by a real detailer for not only real detailers, but also for the DIYer and anyone who's over the hype train, right? So with that, it's admirable that people are talking about like what Brian did, talking about how his brand kind of failed. And I wish him all the best. I really like him. I enjoyed hanging out with him the times that I have that we did with Turtle Wax and stuff like that. I think we're going to see a lot more brands do the quiet quitting, the quiet go away. They just, Jason Otterness is another one who was very open about his business kind of failing or a piece of his business failing or getting taken from him, whatever it was, right? Very admirable that he was able to talk about that because there's a lot of things that people can learn from that. If you do this quiet quitting, no one knows, no one learns. And something I used to tell Tom when I was working with him is like, hey, these guys that these stories need to be told because if they don't get told, then they just go away. And then we don't learn from them at all. And that's a failure on top of a failure. So just like talking about failure is important, I think talking about success is important and what that looks like and what wins I'm having. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this subject and the wins that I'm having, right? And so anyway, with that, jimbosdetailing.com for all that. If you want to experience different, you want to experience everything different from the experience of making a purchase to the liquids in the bottle and everything in between. My brand is very, very different, and I think that's why I'm winning. So if you want to experience that, I invite you over to jimbosdetailing.com. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one. See ya.